On the morning of the 30th of June, 1908, a trader named Semyon Semenov sat on the porch of his post at Vanavara, on the edge of the Siberian taiga. To the north, the sky split open. A flash, wider and brighter than the sun, burned across the whole forest. Then a wave of heat rolled over him, so fierce he thought his own shirt had caught fire. He turned to tear it off, and the blast picked him up and threw him from the porch. He was 65 kilometers from whatever had happened, and whatever it was, it had come out of a clear morning sky. It was felt for hundreds of kilometers. The ground heaved. Herds of reindeer were thrown and killed. The forest for miles was knocked flat in a single instant. Far away in Europe, the instruments answered. Barographs traced a pressure wave crossing the continent. And for several nights after, the sky would not go fully dark. Over London, people stood outdoors at midnight and read their newspapers by a strange glowing dusk. Something vast had happened, in one of the emptiest places on Earth. Everyone assumed the same thing. A great meteorite had fallen, a mountain of rock and iron out of space. And a fallen meteorite leaves two things behind, a crater and metal. But this had come down in trackless Siberian swamp and forest, 1,000 kilometers from the nearest railway. To reach it meant months through bog and taiga. For 19 years, no one did. Then, in 1927, a stubborn Russian mineralogist named Leonid Kulik fought his way in. He was hunting a fortune, a buried mass of meteoric iron for a young Soviet industry. He expected a crater. What he found instead stopped him where he stood. Not a hole in the ground, but a forest laid flat. 80 million trees, across more than 2,000 square kilometers, all thrown down in the same single moment. And the trees were not scattered at random. Every trunk pointed the same way, away from a single point on the horizon, a vast fan of fallen timber spreading outward for miles, as if an enormous hand had pressed down out of the sky. Kulik followed the fallen trees inward, toward the center, certain that there, at last, he would find his crater. There was no crater. At the very center stood the strangest thing of all. The trees were still upright, but stripped naked, every branch and every strip of bark torn away, a silent forest of bare gray poles. They had been standing directly beneath it. The force had come straight down, from above. Whatever had done this had never once touched the ground. The answer was not in the earth, it was in the air. A stone from space, perhaps 50 meters across, had come in at tens of thousands of kilometers an hour. It never landed. The air in front of it, crushed to a white heat, made it detonate 5 to 10 kilometers up with the force of as much as 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. It was the moment we learned that a rock from the sky does not have to reach the ground to flatten a country. And it had come down in almost the only kind of place on Earth where that meant nothing. A few hours difference, the Earth simply turning on its axis, and a great city would have lain beneath it instead of empty forest. Under the largest impact event in recorded history, almost no one died. Not because it was gentle, only because of where and when it happened to arrive. And it arrives again. On a winter morning in 2013, over the Russian city of Chelyabinsk, a far smaller rock, barely 20 meters across, flared brighter than the sun and burst in the open air. 1,500 people were hurt, most of them cut by their own windows, having run to the light a moment before the blast wave reached them. It was a fraction of Tunguska, and we never saw it coming. Somewhere out in the dark, the next one is already on its way. The only thing that has changed is that now, at last, we have begun to watch.